Superman is a superhero who is one of the most popular heroes in the DC comic universe. He is regarded to be one of the strongest comics and fictional characters ever created. The character was created by writer Jerry Siegel and artist Joe Shuster in 1938. Superman is one of the most popular superhero characters and has been adapted into many different types of media. This includes movies, television series, theater, and video games. Superman was born on the fictional planet of Krypton, and as a baby was sent to Earth as the last surviving member of his race after a natural apocalyptic scale cataclysm destroyed the planet. On the other, the X-Men was a fictional team of mutated humans who are considered to be of another race because of the differences they have from regular humans. They were developed by Marvel Comics, created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee in 1963. The X-Men was one of the most recognizable franchises in Marvel Comics. In the Marvel Universe, mutants were born with superhuman abilities and feared and hated by normal humans for being better. The X-Men were led by a powerful telepath called Charles Xavier. The idea of this fan fiction is to create a crossover between the DC Universe and the Marvel Universe. We would like to imagine if Superman was not found and adopted by farmers Jonathan and Martha Kent. What if Superman had crashed in Westchester, New York, rather than in the small fictional town of Smallville? What if Superman had grown up in the X-Mansion and became not just an X-Man, but the first X-Man? What if Professor Xavier had found and raised Superman as his son? What do you think would have happened? How would the story have gone? There are some of the questions we would like to answer with this enticing fan fiction. Now sit back and relax as we take you through this thrilling crossover. While Professor Charles Xavier, who was a secret mutant telepath, was studying at Oxford, he had been on his way home one night when something strange happened to him. On a lonely road, as he drove through, he noticed a light in the sky, and then something that looked like a meteorite passed over his car and crashed into the woods. As a professor, strange things naturally fascinated him. He was curious as to what that was. He quickly stopped over and made a detour into the woods, trying to trace where the strange object had imparted. He got there to find out that what he thought was a meteorite was a space pod, and inside it was a baby. In one night, 2 questions had been answered for him. He now not only knew that an interplanetary journey was possible, but also that there was life on other planets. Although he had always been too smart to think that of all the infinite number of solar systems and planets that exist in the multiverse, there was only life on just Earth. But still, this was an obvious confirmation of what he already knew. He immediately took the baby to his laboratory and came back later with a tow truck for the space pod. He had always had a vision of bringing every sentient creature indigenous to Earth and beyond in complete harmony. He wanted every race to be able to coexist peacefully without bias, discrimination, and segregation. And he worked towards his dreams as the years went by. He named the boy Clark Xavier and legally adopted him as his son, imparting him his virtues and beliefs. As Clark grew older, he began to show signs of having extraordinary abilities beyond humans and very akin to mutants. He knew that he had to protect the boy, teach him to protect himself, and create a safe world for him to grow in. It now seemed like fate had brought Clark to him to inspire him into greatness. Maybe it all was the grand plan of the universe, or even an unknown being's intention. He found the child that night. He spent trying to find out where the boy had come from and worked hard to replicate the technologies of his ship. From a lot of research, he found out that everything Clark came with reacted, especially to his specific DNA sequence. And without him, nothing, even the ship, was not going to work. It was a marvel. He wanted Clark to have as normal of a life as he could. Clark became just as smart as his adopted father, and by the time he was a teenager, he had been able to understand his native language and was able to get information about the planet he had come from and what had happened to it. But as much as he wanted to be normal, it was hard having a father that could hear everything he was thinking, and it made him feel that even when he didn't want to share his deepest thoughts, Xavier could have easily reached into his mind and find it. And as a father, Xavier tried to resist the urge to do this, but found out he did it more than often. Clark ended up inventing an earmuff that could block out Xavier's powers. That way he was able to finally make his thoughts his own. But this began to bridge a gap between him and Charles, and as he grew older, the more He wanted to be a part and pretend he was just like everybody else when he knew he was not. Before he was a teenager, with Charles as his teacher, he was able to master every of his ability to the best it could be. Charles's dream had not been forgotten. He still wanted to create a world where Clark could not only meet others that were special like him, but a place where he could feel safe and normal. Xavier had always planned on transforming his family estate in Westchester into a school that chartered for the needs of the gifted and the different. But when Clark became older, he left for college and wanted to try his best shot at being a completely normal person. He kept his powers hidden and acted like he was like everybody else. Xavier, in the pursuit of his dream, decided to meet other mutants that were trying to create a sanctuary for the special. And in his search, he took him to Israel to meet a mutant named Magnus. When he finally met Magnus, he realized that Magnus's ideology was a bit different from his. Magnus didn't agree with his views. For Magnus, the mutants were the next step in evolution, and the humans were beneath them. Sure, they could coexist with humans, but to him, it was no more than the relationship between cattle and humans. He had a radical view and wanted to instigate a war against humankind. Seeing how strongly Xavier disagreed with him, he decided to end Xavier, feeling he was going to be a block to the future he wanted for the mutants. He also felt that Xavier was betraying his kind and decided to attack him. Xavier was not weak. He and Clark had done nothing but train and prepared for a future where they were going to need to defend themselves. But Magnus could not only control magnetic fields, but he had a strong telepath with him called the Shadow King. One as strong as Xavier. They had overwhelmed him. As he tried to escape, he sent Clark a message, saying that he needed help. Clark had just been heading to class when he got the message. The message had said, "Save me," and he had never received that kind of message from the proud Xavier, who always pretended like he never needed help. This freaked Clark out, and he immediately knew it was urgent. Without regard for who was looking, Clark launched into the air and scanned to find Xavier's voice. As soon as he did, immediately flew straight for it, but he did not arrive in time. When he got to Xavier's side, he was wounded and dying. He took him in his arms and asked him what happened as tears fell out of his eyes. He used his vision and scanned Xavier to see the damage and knew immediately that even if he had decided to rush Xavier to a hospital, he was never going to make it. At that moment, he regretted not spending more time with Charles and regretted shutting him out because he was trying to be normal. Xavier told Clark not to blame himself or the misguided mutants for his death. He then told him he didn't need vengeance. All he wanted was for Clark to make sure that the world was safer for people like him. Right in Clark's arms, Xavier died. 2 months after Xavier's funeral, Clark dropped out of school and concentrated on getting the school that was his father's dream into existence. He had called Jean Grey, who was an old friend and student of his father. She was a telepath too, and he had known her since they had been kids, as Xavier had helped her gain control of her powers. With her help, they worked on the mansion and turned it into Xavier's school for the gifted youngsters, a boarding school for people identical to him, a place where they could feel safe, normal, and protected from the world that hated and feared them. Growing up with the professor made Clark not just perfect his powers, but also work towards getting rid of his weaknesses. He understood the full extent of his powers and unlocked his full potential. Before Charles had passed away, he and Clark had been working on a powerful and wearable lead suit that made Clark invulnerable to kryptonite. After Clark had spent months preparing, it was time to recruit members. He had already brought Jean Grey in, and she was the one who helped him find other mutants, using a machine called the Cerebrum that Charles had developed but Clark had finished. And then he was able to reach out to an FBI agent named Fred Duncan that was in charge of mutant cases. He convinced him to allow him to take custody of young mutants to help them, and Fred agreed. And with the help of Fred and Jean, he was able to recruit the first members of the school, and these students he called X-Men. These first members were Bobby Drake, a mutant with temperature manipulation powers, Warren Worthington III, who was a mutant with wings that had already made his debut as a hero, and finally Hank McCoy, who was just as smart as the professor and had animal-like powers. With this group, he had finally kick-started Xavier's dream. 2 mutants had been rescued by his team, and these new mutants were Rogue and Logan. They had claimed they needed asylum in the mansion as they were being chased by another mutant group they didn't want to belong to anymore. After rescuing them from an ambush, Clark found out that they were being chased by the same man that had taken Xavier away from this. He had promised Xavier that he was never going after Magnus in the name of revenge, and he knew that housing these two new mutants was going to bring trouble to their doorstep and endanger the students of the school. He then decided that he was going to put the new mutants in another location that was secret and safe. But this did not stop Magnus from attacking the school, as he had traced the mutants to the school. At this point, Clark decided to fight back. He was not doing this for revenge, but to protect his students. For the first time, Clark used the full extent of his power and became an unstoppable force, totally decimating Magnus and his Brotherhood. As Magnus saw that he was facing more than he could handle, he was driven into a tight spot and proceeded to use Logan as a hostage. He threatened to rip Logan's skeleton out of him. But Clark, seeing his students be more important than Logan, refused to stand down and stop the fighting and save Logan. Rogue decided to absorb Clark's power, leaving him a little weakened. While the Brotherhood retreated with Logan, Rogue had never felt this powerful. The rush she felt from Clark's power was intoxicating, and she decided to use it to fight back. She chases after them and rescues Logan and beats them back, leaving them with serious causalities before bringing Logan back. As soon as she got back with Logan, Clark was furious. He immediately told them to leave. They were reckless and dangerous, and he didn't want untrained strangers putting his children in danger. As soon as they left, the students convinced Clark that he couldn't turn them away. They were special just like them, and they needed help, and they were the reason the school existed. Convinced, he decided to find them. Magnus had kidnapped both Logan and Rogue. He needed a Rogue to power a machine that was going to turn humans into the same thing they hated so much. The machine, but going to turn them into mutants. He didn't realize that it was not going to work, but would rather just kill them. And he was willing to run at the cost of the Rogue's life. Clark instructed the other X-Men to get the students to the safe secret location before he flew out to find that Rogue and Logan had been kidnapped. When he got to the island where Magnus was going to instrument his plans, he didn't hold back and utterly destroyed the Brotherhood, intentionally wiping them out, so they never got a chance to hurt anyone else again. He also proceeded and killed Magnus as they fought rather than sparing him. Then he destroyed the machine and rescued Logan and Rogue. After bringing them back to the school, he decided that he was going to open the school to every mutant or person with abilities that wanted their help or needed protection. And he was not going to shoot his door to any mutant, no matter how dangerous they were or how much danger they were in. He realized after facing Magnus that without the guide of Xavier, his father, he could have turned out to probably be one of the greatest dangers to this world, and that he needed to be like his father and prevent the world from creating bad people out of helpless people. He then went further to dare the world governments to attack if they wanted to make an enemy of him. He was not afraid to destroy them all if that was what it was going to take to make a better world for all. He was going to protect his people at every cause, including if it meant wiping the humans from the surface of the earth. That's all for this fan fiction, where Superman had been part of the X-Men mutant group from the Marvel Universe. We were able to see that the events surrounding Clark's coming to Earth and how he was raised had changed as a result of the crossover. Rather than being raised by a mild-mannered farmer, he was raised by a sophisticated telepathic professor. We could also see how his different childhood affected his personality. Superman was able to help Professor Charles Xavier, his adopted father, achieve his dream of creating a haven for those who were different. We could also see how Superman not only became an X-Man, but was the initiator of its existence and its first member. Leave a comment and tell us what you think about this fan fiction. If you have an alternative way you think we should have gone, let us know. If you have ideas that differ from what we have provided, tell us about them. How do you think what would happen if Superman was part of the X-Men? Knowing Superman to be someone who had a protective nature, do you think he would have been willing to destroy mankind for the sake of the mutants? Do you think he would have carried on with Professor Charles Xavier's vision? Let us know in the comments section which fanfiction you would like to see us make next. Keep watching our videos, subscribe, like, and comments. Leave comments. Thank you. Take care, and see you in the next video.